One of the things that I love most about learning from Jesus is how many times Jesus goes straight to the bottom line. He doesn't beat around the bush. He doesn't add a whole bunch of fluff to a story, but he just goes straight to the bottom line. And in one of those instances, uh, there's a story where some people come to him, some religious leaders come up to him and say, what is the greatest commandment in all of the law? And Jesus, without batting an eyelash, just goes straight to the bottom line. He says, the greatest one is this, that you love the Lord your God with all of your heart, all of your soul, all of your mind, all of your strength. And then he says, the second one is like it, that you love your neighbor as yourself. And then he says, on these hang all the law and the prophets. This is such an incredible bottom line saying that Jesus is giving to us from his word, that every command that we have in the Bible, everything that we are called to be and do as Christians is anchored around the command to love God with all of our heart, soul, mind, and strength. But what does that even mean? Well, one of the things that has helped me in my own Christian life as I try to process that command is to think of life not so much in a sense of priorities, but more like a wheel. When you think about life from a set of priorities as men, what we tend to do is we tend to create a list. And so, you've heard people say to you before, God should be the highest priority in your life. But for me as a man, that means that God's like the first thing on my checklist, and I check him off, and then I just kind of move on with the rest of my day. But that's not at all what Jesus is talking about here in this great command. What he is saying to us is that God is to be the center of our wheel. He's to be the hub, that everything that we do in our life, who we are as people, how we act, how we think, how we use our time, how we use our money, how we make decisions, everything is to be anchored, to be centered around the idea of what does it look like to show how much I love God right now. This is the bottom line, single greatest commandment that Jesus gives us. And if we are anchored in this as being our center point, to love God with everything we have, then the other commandments start to make sense. They're no longer just a set of rules to do and something that feels overbearing for some people, but really it becomes a joy to be able to do something because it's out of a heart of love for someone that we are doing these things. This week, and really throughout this whole month, we're going to dive into this idea of loving God with all of our heart, soul, mind, and strength. And this week in particular, we're going to look at the whole idea of what it means to love God with our hearts. It means more than what you think it means. Sometimes we think of our heart as just being about our emotions, but that's not at all. That's not the only thing, I should say, that Jesus is referring to when he talks about loving God with all of our hearts. I want to encourage you to make sure you engage with the Promise Keepers Canada devotionals all throughout this week. Share them with some other men and encourage them to subscribe and receive these on an ongoing basis. Let God show you from his word this week what it means to love him with all of your heart. God bless you. Have a great week.